What is going on, all you beautiful movie freaks out there? James Hancock here. I'm back to review Steven Soderbergh's new movie, Kimi, starring Zoe Kravitz, which dropped today on HBO Max. Not to worry, I won't give away any spoilers, but I do want to share a few complimentary words about it and hopefully persuade some folks to check it out. Today, I inexplicably woke up around 5 a.m., which is very rare since I usually go to bed around 3, and figured maybe watching a movie might help settle my brain and help me go back to sleep. But my plan backfired because the movie's pretty goddamn good, and I soon found myself sitting up and watching it before finally moving into my living room and guzzling some coffee in order to cook up this review. And I always find it incredibly difficult to make a video when I've had no sleep and I've got a lot of caffeine sloshing around in my brain, but we're going to do the best that we can. So if you've not yet seen the trailer, Kimi is a lean and mean thriller about a voice stream interpreter who hears evidence of a violent crime, tries to report it, and soon finds herself up to her ears in danger, which all sounds pretty typical on the surface, but what makes this flick worth a look are all the little details that add up to give the film a really compelling sense of style and tone and atmosphere. Also, Zoe Kravitz, she delivers the best performance I've seen by her yet, making me even more fired up to see her as Catwoman next month. And speaking of which, Zoe looks like she's still in superhuman condition in this film and basically looks ready to compete in the Olympics. So what is it then that makes this film stand apart? First of all, it's written by David Koepp, a writer whose output I'm the first to admit is all over the place. He's written tons of terrible movies, but when he's on, he's on. So if you're willing to set aside complete train wrecks like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's hard to deny when he delivers classics like Carlito's Way or Jurassic Park or Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. And I think Kimi's easily one of his strongest screenplays in recent years. First of all, the movie is 90 minutes long, the perfect length for most feature films. Not every story out there needs to be a show, and not every movie needs to be 2.5 hours. I'm of the opinion that most 2.5-hour movies out there could easily be cut down by an hour without negatively impacting the movie at all. But for some reason, IMDb has this movie listed as being 2.5 hours long, but that is incorrect. But what's interesting about the screenplay is how it uses a lot of current events to flesh out the backdrop of the story without overwhelming it. The story takes place in Seattle at the peak of COVID with massive protests in the street, which automatically fills the story with a certain degree of tension. But then we have the central character, Angela, who's brilliant in many ways, but day-to-day life for her can be a huge struggle. She's taken tons of prescription medications, she's in therapy, and you could argue that she's totally agoraphobic, really struggling to step out of her apartment without completely shutting down. Her face-to-face physical interactions with the outside world mostly consists of her nightly booty calls with a guy she likes who lives across the street, who's trying to be as patient with her as he can over her inability to step outside, even for something as inconsequential as grabbing breakfast together. So without giving anything away, Angela is one of many interpreters who's part of this large ecosystem known as Kimi. And Kimi is a lot like Alexa, but instead of using algorithms, the company prides itself on the fact that every command is listened to by a real human being in order to help iron out all the little bugs or mistakes resulting from slang or people just being incomprehensible. We, the audience, know from the very first scene that there's some serious drama going on with the CEO as well as the company's upcoming IPO, which is what makes the company's horrific bureaucracy go into full-blown freak-out mode when Angela tries to report the murder that she thinks she has heard. And it's not just bureaucratic weasels like the one played by Rita Wilson that she has to contend with. There are some legitimately scary, violent sociopaths on the payroll as well who give the film a real sense of danger. But for all you die-hard film freaks out there, you're going to really enjoy seeing Steven Soderbergh and David Koepp take a lot of inspiration from both Hitchcock's Rear Window as well as Coppola's The Conversation, as we see Angela's investigation really start to intensify. And you don't have to have seen those movies to fully appreciate Kimi, but if you haven't seen them yet, I absolutely recommend that you do. But what's really exciting about this movie is seeing how Angela's behavior changes when she's forced to step outside her home in order to pursue her investigation. Zoe Kravitz's body language is just incredible to watch as she's like flinching away from strangers and just recoiling from the outside world, trying to get to her office, which is basically this highly secretive organization that's locked down like Fort Knox. But just getting down the street for her takes an enormous act of will, and this fragility is in stark contrast to her persona in her home, where she has total control over her environment and is able to exude far more confidence in spite of the many obvious problems going on in her personal life. But if you're already a fan of Zoe Kravitz, you're going to really enjoy how this movie is basically a one-woman show with each scene beginning and ending with her character, and Zoe Kravitz is more than up to the task, very comfortably taking center stage for the full movie. Plus, it always helps when you have a really seasoned veteran like Steven Soderbergh behind the camera. The photography of the film is absolutely gorgeous, and as additional icing on the cake, we have one of Steven Soderbergh's best collaborators, composer Cliff Martinez, supplying some really really groovy tunes. And for my money, I hope Steven Soderbergh and Cliff Martinez never stop working together. He supplied the score to my favorite Steven Soderbergh movie, The Limey, another movie which I strongly recommend. But it's going to be hard to say anything more without giving away the story, but what I can say is that once the movie really gets underway, on the whole, it's a pretty pulse-pounding, intense experience, one that I found to be incredibly satisfying. And I'm not going to go over the top and claim that the best movie of 2022 has already arrived or anything like that, but it's a really solid viewing experience. Because on one hand, it's a really great character study, but it's also just a really effective genre film, and sometimes that's all I need. So high five to Zoe Kravitz for delivering a great performance, high five to HBO Max for getting behind this film, and also huge high five to Steven Soderbergh, who continues to be one of the most prolific directors of his generation, going all the way back to his now classic film Sex, Lies, and Videotape. For over 40 years, he's basically been directing a movie a year, sometimes more, and I think I've seen all of them at this point. I'd have to double check to be sure, but I did the deep dive a few years ago for an episode of Wrong Reel I recorded with Jacob Rivera and Matthias van der Roost, where we tackled Steven Soderbergh's entire career, and I'll provide a link to that podcast in the description below. But of all the movies that Soderbergh has directed in the last decade or so, I think Kimi is one of the better efforts. So if, like me, you're sick and tired of watching crap geared toward the entire family and you're ready for something a little edgier, something a little more adult, something with some teeth, give Kimi a try. But I think that's all I have to say for now. I'm fired up to see Zoe Kravitz back in action in a few weeks' time as Selena Kyle, but I hope you enjoyed my review. If so, smash the like button, remember to subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified for future content. But thanks so much for listening, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.